Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going back in history a little bit, talking about the Bucs 2021 NFL Draft, the draft that they had after they won the Super Bowl. And this offseason, 2025, there's going to be a lot of changes to the Buccaneers roster, and I think that this very well may be the end of the 2021 draft class for the Bucs, right? In terms of these guys making an impact on the Buccaneers, and we could see by the end of this offseason every single player of the Bucs 2021 draft class moving on to different teams, and it just wasn't a good draft class. I mean, for Jason Light, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I feel like it's important to talk about because we can't just sweep the bad under the rug to talk about the good. It's important to be fair in analysis and look at things objectively. And taking a look at the 2021 draft class, yes, it was coming off of a Super Bowl and context does matter, but the Bucs didn't have that great of a draft in 2021. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Firstly, with their first round pick, the Bucs took Tryon-Shoyinka at pick number 32. He was supposed to be a guy who could come in and be the future number one edge rusher for this organization, right? And the Bucs did try very hard to bring Shoyinka along, right? Tryon-Shoyinka along, right? It just never really materialized. And they gave him a lot of chances. He played in 66 games, started 45 games, but only had 15 sacks in 4 years. It's not great, right? They didn't pick up his fifth-year option for a reason. They gave him every opportunity as a starter, but it just seemed like as time was going on, he was losing more and more and more snaps to beat a veteran like Shaq Barrett, be it Yaya Diaby, be it Anthony Nelson this past season, whoever it may have been, JTS just could never stick as a do-it-all type of edge rusher that can be solid in run defense and also be a solid pass rusher as well. We saw flashes of those moments from JTS, but it never materialized into a guy that was a first round draft pick caliber type of player, unfortunately, right? So that is notable. But I will say JTS was probably, you could argue, the second best pick in the 21 draft for the Bucs, right? Taking a look at the next pick, Kyle Trask, pick number 64, the Bucs' second round draft pick, it didn't work out, right? And not all of that is Kyle Trask's fault, right? Tom Brady did come back and play a couple more seasons. Trask was tabbed to be the potential successor to Tom Brady after he was done, but Trask has only ever thrown 11 passes in the regular season for the Buccaneers. Why did that happen? Well, the Buccaneers ended up finding Baker Mayfield after Tom Brady. And there was a very legitimate quarterback competition between Kyle Trask and between Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield just ended up winning, and we know the story as what it has been since then, right? And there was a scenario where it was 2023 or 2022, sorry, where Brady was retired and you were going to be looking at a scenario where Kyle Trask was going to battle it out with then backup quarterback Blaine Gabbert. We were going to see who the starting quarterback was going to be, but then Brady came back and Trask ended up being relegated to the backup spot yet again, right? So you can't argue that Trask has never been given a fair chance to be this team's starting quarterback because, of course, he's not going to start over Tom Brady. But I think the most legitimate chance came whenever he was battling in that 2023 offseason with Mayfield, and he lost the battle, right? And now you're looking at a scenario where Trask's contract is up, just like JTS, and Trask is probably going to at least look to go somewhere else, right? Whether or not that will or won't happen is going to remain to be seen, whether or not he will go off and try and compete for a starting quarterback job elsewhere. But whenever you look at a second round selection, even it being the last pick of the second round, picking a quarterback is one thing, right? If that guy eventually does grow to be some type of starter for you, but spending a second round pick on a backup quarterback, it's a bit rich, right? Or not even a bit. It's a pretty rich pick to have a backup quarterback, right, at pick number 64, who's only thrown 11 regular season passes for you for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I got to say that pick hasn't or had not worked out either for the Bucs. You then move on to their third round pick. It was Robert Hainsey coming in at pick number 95. Folks, to be honest, this is the best pick of the Bucs 2021 draft class, in my opinion. He played and started all 17 games at center for the Bucs in 2023, also 2 playoff games in there as well. He was eventually benched for Graham Barton in 2024, and he also had to start at center in 2022 under Tom Brady after the injury to Ryan Jensen had occurred. So like Robert Hainsey started a lot of games for the Bucs, right? In 2022 and in 2023. He was a guy, he's started 35 games for the Bucs, right? He started 2 playoff games for the Bucs. It doesn't look like he started in that 2022 playoff game, which is interesting to me. Maybe he was hurt, but like it's important to note that like Hainsey started 2 years out of his 4 years in Tampa Bay at center, and he was a serviceable starter, right? He was a serviceable starter. Now, the Bucs did decide to move on and bench him in place of Graham Barton, but Hainsey is a guy where, like, I still think he can go off to another team in free agency this offseason and be a quality starting center or guard, whatever he's going to be playing going forward, but, like, Hainsey's decent, right? And I don't think it's crazy to say, like, in terms of the overall production that what we saw from Hainsey playing 60 games, starting 35 for the Bucs, you could argue he was the most productive player out of any draft pick the Buccaneers made in this 2021 draft class. And he's probably the shining gem of the Bucs class. I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about Hainsey. I think that he was a fine pick, especially for a third rounder. He developed into a starting caliber offensive lineman, which is really what you want to see out of offensive linemen that are picked. But the negative is that he's not going to be retained in Tampa Bay likely. He's going to be going somewhere else. So again, it's another bit of a strike in my opinion, because they did eventually draft a replacement for Robert Hainsey, which isn't a good sign as well. I don't necessarily think that's 100% against Hainsey, but it is also a sign that, like, hey, they wanted an upgrade over Hainsey as well. So I don't have a ton of negative things to say about Hainsey. Jaylen Darden was their 4th round pick number 129, played in 21 games for the Buccaneers, only ever had 10 touches for 82 yards, guys. 10 touches for 82 yards was released late in the 2022 season. So he barely lasted over a year and a half in a Buccaneers uniform. He would then go on to join the Cleveland Browns, not really do a ton for them either. I'm actually curious to see where Jaylen Darden currently is. He's actually with the Seattle Seahawks, matter of fact. He joined the Seattle Seahawks on December 5th. So, he's currently with Seattle. He's still young, 26 years old, so maybe he'll do something with Seattle over there. But for a 4th round pick, only getting 10 touches for 82 yards, I know he was brought in to be like a returner, but he wasn't even necessarily a good returner as well, considering he was eventually released and replaced with Jadon Mickens and some other guys in the Buccaneers system as well. So that was a pretty big miss in the 4th round as well, which is now we're kind of getting into territory where you're taking flyers on guys after the 4th round. But Darden was a big miss in there as well. KJ Britt is the next player. You could argue probably the 3rd best player in this class behind JTS and Robert Hainsey being at number 1. Look, for a 5th round pick, coming in at pick number 176, 59 games played, 15 starts. He did start 2 playoff games, 126 combined tackles in 4 years with the Bucs, but he's not a starting caliber guy. Like, he's very much a backup. Maybe he'll be back with the Buccaneers. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they say, hey, you know what, we're moving on. We've got Servassier Dennis, we've got J.J. Russell, both of which severely outplayed or have outplayed KJ Britt in scenarios. And Servatier Dennis is a 5th round pick in his own right. JJ Russell is an undrafted free agent. There was potential there with KJ Britt in that 2023 season when he replaced Devin White as the team's number 2 linebacker to Levante David. They took a risk on KJ Britt. They said, hey, you're going to be our starter for a full season in 2024. And it just didn't work out. I mean, he ended up getting Devin Whited himself, right? And getting eventually benched for guys like Deion Jones, who was a veteran waiver addition, and JJ Russell and stuff like that. So KJ Britt started as a hero, but lived long enough to see himself become the villain, which was unfortunate. He had what happened to him is what he did to Devin White, basically, right? He replaced Devin White late in the season in 2023, and then he was eventually replaced late in the 2024 season. So, everything came around full circle. I don't necessarily think KJ Britt's probably going to be back, but you can argue he's probably the 3rd best pick in this Bucs draft class, but didn't necessarily put up a ton of great numbers. Did get a chance, right? Did get a chance and did do some good things. But it is what it is. Chris Wilcox, 7th round pick number 251, never played a snap for the Buccaneers. It is what it is. I don't even think Chris Wilcox is actually in the league anymore. He's not. He's not in the league. He's joined a lot of different teams. He was with the Colts. He was with the Cardinals. He was with the Steelers, the Chargers, and the Panthers. But he hasn't done anything since then. Still very young. He's 27 years old, but he's never really done anything in the league since getting let go from the Bucs. Grant Stewart was the Mr. Irrelevant pick number 259. He did play 17 games for the Buccaneers, had 15 combined tackles in the 2021 season, but was traded to the Colts before the 2022 season. So you're looking at a scenario where Jaylen Darden, Chris Wilcox, and Grant Stewart were all gone before the end of the second year of this draft class, by the way. So 3 out of the 7 picks were already gone before year 2 of this draft class even ended, right? Then you've got Kyle Trask. It wasn't good, right? It wasn't good. Like, you do have some okay moments from JTS, KJ Britt in there as well, and Robert Hainsey being what he was. I mean, honestly, being like the most quality pick out of the bunch. But there was a lot of misses, right? And in context matters. Yes, JTS had some good moments and had some fine moments, but was he really worth a 1st round pick? No. Was Kyle Trask worth a 2nd round pick? Certainly not, right? Especially like with what you've gotten from him, right? Robert Hainsey, in terms of round and positional value, like, was the best. KJ Britt played well for a 5th rounder. I will say that, right? Like, in terms of 5th rounder, like, he probably went above expectations, or in fact, I would say he likely did go above expectations of what a 5th rounder should be, right? So that's a bit of a nod in there as well. Like I said, he's probably the 3rd best player that was selected in this 21 class. But after that, the miss of JTS, that's a miss in my opinion. Kyle Trask is a miss. Darden's a huge miss. Britt is okay, played above expectations. And then Wilcox and Grant Stewart never got a ton of opportunities in there as well. So it just wasn't a good draft class, right? And it's important to make a note of that. It's important to take a look at that. And the Buccaneers did have some misses. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. If things did work out, hey, Trask would probably be the starting quarterback right now. JTS would be a starting caliber pass rusher. He's not. Jaylen Darden would probably be at least in the wide receiver rotation for the Bucs. He's not. KJ Britt would at least be in the linebacker rotation right now. He's likely on the way out. And Wilcox and Grant Stewart maybe would be special teamers at this point, but they're gone as well. So the reason why it was bad is because, look, 4 years after this class is done, all of these guys are probably going to be gone, right? Probably. The only 2 you may see come back are Trask as a backup and KJ Britt as a backup. So that's not great, man. It's not great. But what do you guys think about this 2021 draft class? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions about it down in the comments section below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. As always, guys, I will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.